It's not your fault that you can't build muscle. It's not your fault that you struggle with weight loss. It's not your fault that you can't bench 100 kilos, even though some on the internet are benching over 150 kilos. Your genetics play a huge role in the way you look, the way you feel, and the way you perform. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 things that you didn't even realize were genetic that could be holding you back. But without further ado, let's start off with number 5. The likelihood of you getting injured. The thickness and quality of your bones and joints play a huge role in determining whether you are likely to get injured. You see this in professional sports all the time where some people have all the talent in the world, yet they just always get injured and never really live up to their full potential because the structure of your bones and joints, which have an impact on the likelihood of you getting injured, are pretty much exclusively determined by your genetics. The only way you can tell you have bad genetics in this field without getting a full body exam is look at your past injury experience. If you come to the conclusion that you get injured fairly often, then that's a sign that you don't have good genetics in this area. All you can do is make sure you train safely with proper form, maybe avoid certain exercises that trigger injuries in places which you've been injured before. Make sure you get good sleep and rest and you're eating well because bad recovery actually increases the likelihood of you getting injured. I would say I have very good genetics in this area as I've never been injured from the gym, literally ever, despite 10 years of training, some of those years with very questionable form. And even today, I do heavy skull crushers and heavy easy bar preacher curls without ever getting injured. Also, in competitive football, I never get injured, I never miss games. I always play 90 minutes of pretty much 98% of games every single season. Despite me weighing over 100 kilos, I'm putting lots of effort into bodybuilding as well. Number 2, your anatomy, as I can't say anatomical structure. So for someone like me who's really only into bodybuilding rather than powerlifting, I don't really care. But for a lot of you who are either into powerlifting or strongman or just really care more about strength than actually the way you look, then this point is very important. For example, having shorter arms will give you an advantage on the bench press, but conversely, while shorter arms are a benefit on the bench press, they're a disadvantage on the deadlift. While if you want to have a better squat, it's better to have shorter legs rather than long legs, as I do. But those are just the clear, obvious ones. Pretty much every single exercise will be easier for some people compared to others, and vice versa. The way you get around this, if you have bad genetics, is only focus on your own progress, and if you have bad genetics on one exercise, chances are you're going to have good genetics on another exercise. Number 3, your ability to tolerate stress and your ability to sleep well. High levels of stress and/or reduced quality of sleep will lead to an increase in your levels of cortisol, which can be bad for your long-term health, but most importantly, it blocks testosterone. The blocking of testosterone has a negative impact on the way you feel, but also your ability to build muscle and drop body fat. While life throws many things at us, which makes us more stressed, while sleep quality is often impaired by a lot of people going on their phone at night, or just not having many healthy sleep practices, your genetics still play a key role in this area. With the stress, it's quite hard to tell whether you have good or bad genetics in this area as you don't know how other people's bodies are dealing with stress, while your stress could just be brought upon by life circumstances. With sleep quality, it's a bit easy to tell. For example, if you're someone who gets only around 6 hours of sleep yet still feels fine the next morning, that could be a sign you have great genetics for sleeping, as your sleep quality is high enough to the point where you only need 6 hours of sleep for you to feel refreshed. Conversely, if you're one of those guys who sleeps for 8, 9, even 10 hours and still feels groggy and tired in the morning, then you may have bad genetics for sleeping. The good thing about this factor is that it's probably the most controllable factor on this list. If you're someone who can't tolerate stress, you could do things like practice meditation, supplementation, for example, things like L-theanine, or there's like a immediate stress relief supplement which I take occasionally, which has like melatonin and things inside. You can also take daily walks, exercise regularly. Try not to stress about certain small things, which is obviously easier said than done. With sleep, again, there's lots of things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep. For example, not going to bed with your phone, reducing blue light exposure at night, trying to read before bed to calm your brain down, going to sleep earlier in the first place, supplementation through magnesium. I myself often get stressed and suffer from bad sleep, although I would say I'm able to tolerate it quite well, but it's something you can't really tell, to be honest. And even if I did have bad genetics in this area, it's definitely something which I would be able to manage. Number 4, and I say this is probably the most important factor on this list, but anything related to the consumption of food. Your appetite levels, your ability to eat lots of food, as well as your metabolism are all determined by your genetics. When it comes to building muscle, if you struggle to eat enough calories and protein, then that's obviously a problem. Often those with bad genetics in this area are born skinny, they stay skinny till they enter the gym, and if they don't knuckle down and make a serious effort to bulk up, then they just stay skinny and end up wasting their time in the gym. While I've never been in this position myself, as I'm the opposite end of the spectrum, which I'm going to get to next, I know a guy who literally was on the verge of fainting because he hadn't eaten anything all day. not because he didn't have any food, as in he's in England, there's food everywhere, but because he literally forgot to eat and didn't bother to eat. If you're trying to build muscle but don't have the genetics to eat much food, then the best thing you can do is go for high calorie dense and low volume foods. That means things like white rice, olive oil, peanut butter, and high fat meats should make up the bulk of your diet, while also adding in cheat meals here and there, and track your calories every single day. I'd argue it's actually more important to track your calories when trying to bulk up as a naturally skinny person compared to when you're trying to lose weight. Tracking your calories will hold you accountable and make sure you're eating enough food so you can't say, I can't gain weight. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have those that struggle to lose weight, probably have a slow metabolism, and an endless appetite. If you have bad genetics in this area, you probably are, or at least were, overweight at some point in your life. You have more fat cells than the average person, again, making it harder for you to lose weight. And even once you've lost the weight, it makes it more likely for you to gain the weight back. And unfortunately, it's not necessarily optimal for muscle building because even though you can eat enough for muscle growth, if you're overweight or obese, it's bad for your insulin resistance and levels of testosterone, which make it harder to put on muscle. And to get around this, it again comes down to food selection. You need to make sure you're consuming whole foods, high in protein, high in fiber, lots of vegetables while trying to minimize cheat meals. It's also very important to keep active, not just lifting weights at the gym, but also making sure you're getting enough steps in per day or doing some form of cardio. And try not to get too bored because I highly doubt anyone that boredom eats, which is very common, has skinny genetics. I myself was born fat and have a very big appetite. The way I circumvent that is playing football competitively and going to the gym. Well, obviously I do both for fun, but doing them makes it pretty much impossible for me to get fat. I also make sure to consume a high protein diet, try and minimize consumption of processed foods, but even me, because of all the sports activity I'm doing, as well as the amount of muscle mass I hold, I'm able to eat loads of calories, meaning that even though I have a big appetite and I'm a genetically fat person, I won't get fat. And number 5, your ability to stay consistent, as believe it or not, motivation and discipline are partly genetic. Your brain releases a chemical called dopamine, and the amount of dopamine released by your brain from a certain activity is partly dependent on your genetics. That's why 2 people can do the exact same task, yet the guy with higher dopamine release will enjoy the task much more than the guy with lower dopamine release. If your brain naturally releases more dopamine, not only will you be more motivated and disciplined to train consistently, but you'll also push yourself harder and enjoy the gym more. So how can you tell whether you have good genetics in this area? Well, it's pretty hard to tell because motivation and discipline are determined by many factors. For example, if you're highly stressed or, God forbid, you've just lost your job, it's going to be very hard for your brain to release dopamine, even if you're genetically gifted in this area. If you're someone who regularly struggles with motivation and discipline, it doesn't just have to be in the gym, it could be in any area of life, then that could be a sign that you're not exactly genetically gifted. But don't to worry, I'm going to give you some tips that can help you. The first thing is, when it comes to the habit of going to the gym regularly, you only have to use motivation and discipline for maybe 1 year at max. Once you've built the habit of going to the gym regularly and it's pretty much ingrained in your system, then no matter how little dopamine your brain releases, you're going to stay consistent no matter what. And to stay consistent in that first year, first thing is you need to have a why. You need to have a reason for you wanting to go to the gym and get in shape. That reason needs to be strong enough. It can't just be because it will be cool. It has to be like a proper deep reason, like you want to improve your health, you want to be more confident, maybe you want to be able to attract a partner. And so in times you don't feel like going to the gym, have that reason in the back of your head and think, if I don't make the gym, I'm not going to be able to achieve this goal, which I set out to do. Another thing you can do is a dopamine detox. That means things like scrolling on social media, alcohol, drugs, which I hope none of you are using. Take that all out of your life because they all release dopamine in ways that are not productive. And after a few days to a week of not constantly releasing dopamine through things that have no benefit in your life, you'll find that things which were typically boring were many hours in the future. My camera died and I had to go to football, which we won, so that was all good. I want to also caveat that I haven't included things like muscle insertions, your muscle fibers, things which have a significant impact on the way you look, because those are the most obvious and everyone knows that. Well, not everyone, but when you think of genetics, you think of some people just having better muscle insertions, some people having fast twitch muscle fibers. Those are already things which you already know are impacted by genetics, which is why I haven't mentioned them in this video. So I just want to close this video off by leaving a note. Just because you have bad genetics doesn't mean you should use that as an excuse. Yes, you probably won't ever be Mr. Olympia. That's fine. I'm never going to be Mr. Olympia myself. But you can still build a physique which you're incredibly proud of and looks better than 90% of the general population if you train hard and consistently, eat properly, get enough sleep and rest, and manage your overall stress levels. And then look at me, for example. I have literally a whole missing pec. It's not actually genetics, as some people think. It's just a condition I was born with. There's nothing I can do about it. I just use the cards that I'm dealt with. And if anything, it actually motivates me to train even harder, because I know that I have a disadvantage, so I have to make up for it in other areas. So anyway, that's it for this video. Feel free to like and why not subscribe to my YouTube channel for more fitness content in general. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I post there as well. And let me know in the comments if you actually agree with these 5 different points as well. And or if you have any other additional suggestions as well as the things which are genetic, which a lot of people may not think are genetic. Also add them in the comments too. And enjoy the rest of your day.